Welcome to Cross Culture New Mexico. I'm your host, Mark Tross. Be sure to check out our website, crossculturenm.weebly.com. Subscribe to this YouTube page, Cross Culture NM. Follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, and other social media sites. We're going to continue our series on Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I want to emphasize the use of this specific book, God's Appointed Times. It is written by Barney Kasdan, one of my favorite books. I use it all the time, and he has several books out. I highly recommend them. I'm going to be covering in this portion of the series on the New Testament observance. And most of these traditions came about in the first century. There are numerous references to Passover in the New Covenant. This is extremely important. Passover is mentioned in the Gospel accounts. Luke 2:41, John 5:1 and 6:4, as well as the book of Acts, Acts 12:3 and 4. And by far the most famous account is the last Passover celebrated by Yeshua, Jesus, whose name means salvation, and his Jewish disciples in an upper room, according to Matthew chapter 26 and Luke 22. Now, the traditional items mentioned, which we talked about last time, are lamb, Luke chapter 22, verse 8, the bitter herbs, Matthew 26, verse 23, the washings, which we did not bring up yet, but John 13, 1 through 15. And remember, Pilate himself, the Roman governor, washed his hands when he condemned Jesus, the Lamb of God, to death. The 4 cups of wine, Matthew 26 and Luke 22, and the matzah, Matthew 26, 26. Now, the lamb reminds one of the means of redemption, the blood of the sacrifice. In this case, Messiah became the Pesach, or our Passover lamb, according to John 1:29. Bitter herbs speak of the terrible bondage to an oppressor. Not surprisingly, it was the bowl of bitter herbs that Judas, a man who came to a bitter end, dipped his matzah. The hand and foot washing typify the need for cleansing before approaching a holy God. And understand that sacrifices were washed before they were sacrificed. We are to be living sacrifices for our God, according to Romans 12. Now, Exodus 6, verse 6 through 7, speaks of each of these 4 cups of wine and the important lessons thereof. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and will redeem you with an outstretched arm and a mighty axe of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. This cup of sanctification appears at the start of the Seder. So we are sanctified or set apart, set aside for the services of God. The second cup is known as the cup of praise, sometimes called the cup of plagues. Now, I've seen this done several ways, by either pouring, each time the plagues are mentioned, a little drip on your plate, or taking your finger and dipping it into the wine and putting it on the dish, representing the finger of God. The third cup, the cup of redemption, was designed by Messiah Yeshua as a special memorial through all generations. It was once a memorial cup of physical redemption for the Jews from Egypt. For believers in Yeshua, this cup symbolizes the spiritual redemption found in Messiah's sacrifice. So how often one should celebrate the Lord's Supper, as it has been called up to this time, according to 1 Corinthians 11:26. Jesus himself said, for as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes, according to Paul the Apostle. So whether you celebrate on the first Sunday of the month, or every week, or every time you have a service, but the emphasis, according to this view, should be on the phrase, do this. Remember, we are called to be doers of the word, and that's meaning the unleavened bread and the third cup of Passover. So the cup of acceptance or praise is the 4th cup, and is a fitting closing to the Seder service, or the order of the service for Passover or Pesach. After sanctification, praise, or plagues, and redemption, this cup reveals the wonderful symbolic truth of God's acceptance of his people. It is around this cup that some of the Hallel Psalms are sung, or the Psalms of praise. And remember, Jesus celebrated the Passover. They went out singing as he went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray to the Father before being captured and crucified. Check out our website, crossculturenm.weebly.com. Next time we'll be talking about the prophetic fulfillment of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread.